Hi. My hellos are just not getting better. By the way, how amazing is my cardigan? I love it. The reason why I'm carrying on this topic is just I had planned to do something really light-hearted and sort of funny for this video, but then I started watching over the videos that Andy and the guys made in response, and I just couldn't leave it there. I want to talk a little bit more about gender. Obviously, for me, the fact that someone is identified a certain gender at birth does not mean that they are automatically that sex. There are characteristic differences between males and females, like typical gender roles. So, there are differences between me and Emery that are down to him being male and me being female. Now, like, just imagine this in like a little, inverted commas, because I'm getting to a point. To me, those differences are hormones. So in my body, estrogen is the dominant hormone, and in Emery's body, it's testosterone. And, there's that whole debate of whether men and women are different or if blah, blah, blah. And just from having conversations with Emery, there definitely is a change in the brain from hormones, at least for him. So this is just my personal experience. So, he used to like cuddling a lot more, all the sort of stereotypical female things he used to enjoy more than he does now. And that seems to be down to testosterone. And on paper, yes, those sort of traditional gender roles do seem to apply somewhat. But the point that I'm trying to get at is that, we need to get to a point where it's not seen as a stereotypical female thing to do or a stereotypical male thing to do, but something that is a stereotypical estrogen thing or a stereotypical testosterone thing, or a behavior or thought process that is associated with estrogen or testosterone. And we need to separate the gender roles attached to those hormones. Estrogen doesn't have to be the female hormone, and testosterone doesn't have to be the male hormone. As in, I mean, someone who is pre hormone replacement therapy shouldn't be considered female because they have more estrogen in their system. Someone with extra testosterone in their system or higher levels of testosterone in their system shouldn't be considered male. Hormone-wise, those stereotypes do seem to be there, or those traits, I would call them traits. Testosterone, bigger sex drive; estrogen, more emotions; testosterone, get mad easier. I feel that we should take away the gender label. And also, there is an issue that I have with the whole saying that trans men don't have penises and that trans women don't have vaginas. You'll see these sort of posts going around Tumblr: just because I have a penis doesn't mean I'm not a girl, or just because I don't have a penis doesn't mean I'm not a man, that sort of stuff. And my issue with that is words and definitions. All the words we use in our vocabulary and all the definitions they have are things we have made up. So we are giving words the power. The way I look at it, and I think the way maybe some people should also learn to look at it, is what is the word penis other than a descriptive word of genitalia that we as a society, or society, because I don't agree, has attached to a certain looking genitalia. Like, what makes, where is the line crossed? Like, what makes a penis and a vagina a vagina? Because realistically speaking, every single person is different. Biologically speaking, female and male anatomy aren't that different. So in the womb, we all start out as female. And then at around the 8-week mark, I believe, the clitoris starts to become elongated, so will become a penis. The foreskin and the clitoris and that is literally the same, it's just a little bit elongated, and that's the only sort of change that becomes. What happens then is the ovaries drop and become testicles, the labia become the scrotum. So there is not that much difference, really, realistically speaking. What makes a guy's penis not a penis anymore? The only thing is society and our definitions and our stigma that we put on top of it. I'll watch trans guys' videos on YouTube of, for example, music, and they will say, just because I don't have a dick, etc, etc, etc. So what I'm trying to say is, even within the community, there is still closed-minded views and oppressed views on their own condition. Not that, it's a condition, but what I mean is, even we as people oppress ourselves with words and definitions and being closed-minded and not being able to open our minds enough. So thanks for tuning in. I'm going to do something for the end of my video that I think I might make a little bit of a tradition. One of the things that I'm not too good at is I can't wink. So here we go. Let's go with the right eye first. That's how you do it with the right eye. Here's the lefty, just for you. And on that note, bye!
Hey, this is Casper, and you're watching the Working Title Project. Today I'm just going to talk about gender. So for someone who is transgender and genderqueer, I guess my gender is pretty blurry for most people. I know that a lot of people read me as female, or they might think I'm an ugly girl or just a weird long-haired bulldyke. Sometimes I am read as like a teenage boy, but basically that's always wrong. Like every day of my life I am misgendered, except for the people who are closest to me and who can see me. I guess I'm misgendered because people choose to interact with each other based on gender and based on the existence of only two apparent genders, man, woman. We assume what someone's gender is and then we interact with them based on that assumption. When I was younger, before I knew I was trans, I used to identify as gender sporadic. So I would tell my friends, hey, I'm gender sporadic, please interact with me based on how you're reading me, but don't let that reading ever be stagnant or the same. So I would say to them, use a different pronoun for me every time you see me. It can be she, him, they, it. You can make one up, but you have to change it every time. And I did that because I wanted people to see me how I saw myself, which was all of those genders and non-genders, and none of them or one of them in one moment. And that didn't really work. No one really did it because I think, having more than one pronoun is apparently really, really hard for people, which I get. I guess that's like a weird thing when you're not just like a man or a woman. So I dropped gender sporadic pronouns a couple of years ago, and now I just use they and them because that is the closest thing that represents the myriad of being that I am. Pronouns aren't the problem, I guess gender is the problem in most societies. Not all societies. I don't know what gender is like in all the hundreds and thousands of different communities that there are. But how I was raised, gender is quite boring. And there's only man or woman. It would be really awesome if we could stop making gender about our body parts and about our secondary sex characteristics. I know that's really helpful for a lot of people in like affirming their gender, but it's also really restricting. I don't really believe in the term post-gender. I just think there has been way too much oppression and discrimination over hundreds and thousands of years that has gone down. There can't be an overnight resolution from that. So that's why I just don't think the term post-gender really works. But I do hope that we, in time, can get to a place where we are not having relationships with each other based on what we're seeing on the outside. There's constant change in all areas of life. There will always be change structurally, but also in nature. So I have hope. I have hope that gender will change, and it is changing slowly over time, and that gender can become more and more a really fun, awesome, consensual thing, rather than something that is forced upon us and determines whether we can get jobs, who we can sleep with, what we're capable of doing with our lives. You know, we're not all born onto it, and I guess it takes time to grow your own politics. I do think there's space for us to take on board each other's magical, unique, snowflake genders. Slowly, once we and the world, capitalism, marketing, all that stops making everything about gender, and that genders are completely opposite or a binary, I mean, fuck that. To me, I see gender not even on a spectrum, it's a galaxy. Then, and only then, will we start being able to have relationships based on mutual care and respect, not based on our gender. When gender isn't forced on me, I think it's fucking awesome. I have a lot of fun with it. I love playing up butch femme in one of my relationships. The reason it's so good is because that was never assumed. We created that dynamic with each other mutually and consensually. And what I don't like about gender is, again, when it is forced on us and when it is assumed. When someone assumes that's what you are, so that's how I'm going to fucking treat you. I've never been to university or college or studied gender. I just know gender from having my own complex gender and trying to think about what gender is. I'm still deconstructing it. I have not finished deconstructing it, and I probably won't. It will be a lifelong process. I just also wanted to say that, being really honest here, this is an incredibly hard topic to cover, not only because gender is so huge and there are so many different books and discussions already about it, but because I live it, I experience gender in a really unique way. I think about it every day. I have thought about it every day of my life for as long as I can remember. It's kind of hard to try and sum up my thoughts about gender to a potentially really broad and diverse audience. So I hope what I have said and talked about makes some kind of sense. And obviously these are just my thoughts and opinions, and there is so much more to be said and thought about with gender. What do you think gender is? Why do we feel gender? What does it mean to you? How does it affect your life? These are big and hard questions, but they are good things to talk about. I will see you all again soon. So thanks heaps for watching. Bye!
Howdy, it's Wesley. We're talking about gender. The part of the conversation that I would like to continue to discuss is what Jess brought up towards the end in regards to gender and its relation or correlation or miscorrelation with genitals. Yeah, and I'm stumbling through my thoughts right now. This is turning out to be much more difficult for me to put into words than I thought. This is the only time and place I have to kind of dive into this today. So, as far as like defining genitals, penis, vagina, these names we have put on specific body parts, and science, I guess, has given them a definition. Based off of that, based on what you have between your legs when you're born is what the doctor or your family or whoever uses to say what gender you are. And then whatever, you can grow up and decide or recognize that that doesn't correlate with your true gender. But then there's the thing that kind of gets said a lot, I think, within the trans community, like, it's not what's between my legs, it's what's between my ears. Which I understand completely, but I have some problems with it because I feel like it might give this message that a trans person shouldn't want anything different between their legs than what they were born with. So I think that that's a twisted message. But yeah, like gender and genitals. Why is there such a strong correlation in society that a guy has to have a penis and a girl has to have a vagina? And then me as a trans man who has not had surgery to change my genitals, I can still choose to call my junk whatever I want to call it. I can still call it a penis, and people in my life will respect that, and so I can change the definition of penis, and that's all awesome and dandy and grand, but that doesn't change the fact that I don't have that piece of anatomy, like that actual body part that most people are talking about when they say the word penis, which doesn't make me any less of a man, but it's definitely not gender affirming for me personally. I have a lot of dysphoria around it, and I would love to have a penis like a cisgendered male's penis. So for me, like, no matter how much I change the definition, or not change the definition, but reclaim and own what's between my legs shouldn't matter. And it doesn't matter as far as gender, but it matters as far as my congruence with my gender that's in my head. I guess for me, a lot of it has to do with function. Jess mentioned that there really isn't a whole lot of difference between the clit and the penis, and there's a heck of a lot of truth to that. However, there are still, like, fundamental differences in function. I don't know. I'm sorry that this is kind of a really scattered video, but that's kind of where I'm at with it. I hope I made sense a little bit on parts of that, or else you can ask me to elaborate. I gotta go, because I'm sweating in this car. It's nasty.
This is a topic that I've been thinking about a lot for the last few years, and trying to formulate my opinions and thoughts on it. It seems to be like a really touchy topic of discussion, especially among trans people. So first I want to start off with a disclaimer that this is just how I feel, and I really do think it's up to every individual person to define language and body parts and hormones the way that they want. I really believe, like, as long as you're not hurting anyone, then do what you want, you know? This is such a hard topic to talk about. Wes kind of touched on this a little bit, like saying, you know, he can call his junk whatever he wants. He can call it a penis, even though he hasn't had any surgery. I really do believe people can call body parts whatever they want. And I really do see language for trans people, especially in regards to body parts, is really just about minimizing dysphoria. A trans man, for example, who hasn't had any lower surgery I don't see anything wrong with calling it a penis if that makes you feel better and that's how you identify. That's not harming anyone. It's fine. But at the same time, I just feel like maybe as our society evolves more, we won't feel the need to do that as much, maybe. I just feel like sex and gender have been linked so heavily in our society that it's really hard to de-gender body parts. I tell myself, obviously, like, my genitals are no more gendered than my arm is. Like, no matter what I have down there, I'm gonna be a man, you know? Yet, because of the fact that sex and gender have been so linked in our society, so heavily linked, it's really hard to use the language for what I have in my pants without thinking woman. Like, we throw around these terms in the trans community like sex and gender are different, but I don't think a lot of us even really believe it. This is part of the reason why I've stopped calling myself transgender, because I really don't see my gender as having ever changed. I see my sex as having changed. So I really just started saying that I'm transsexual. All the steps that I take with surgery, hormones, whatever, I feel like it's to ease my body dysphoria. And my gender was always the same, just people perceive it differently because I've changed my body now. I've tried before to use a different language for my genitals and call it a penis, but for me anyway, it just ended up making me feel more dysphoric and basically making me feel like I didn't have space to really acknowledge my dysphoria. It doesn't, if I'm calling what I have down there a penis, it doesn't really give me space to talk about the fact that I don't have a penis, like at least in the typical sense of the word and, you know, the scientific sense of the word. And it doesn't help me, for example, talk to my boyfriend about how that makes me feel. I'm really trying hard to just de-gender those body parts, and I would even ideally like the word female to be de-gendered, because female just describes sex characteristics. Technically, if you look at the definitions of these words, like, female refers to physical things, like certain body parts, certain hormones. You can have a gender identity as male and still technically live in a body that has a lot of female characteristics. I think of myself in the current moment as being intersex because I technically don't possess every physical trait of being male. If I start saying that I'm 100% male, like, how am I supposed to talk about the fact that I really don't feel 100% male, you know? I know a lot of people are going to disagree with this, and I know a lot of people like to say, you know, just because I have a vagina doesn't mean that I'm any less male. But for me, anyway, that kind of, like I said, doesn't give me space to talk about my dysphoria or talk about my experience in my body. It takes away that language. Like, for example, if I'm sleeping with my boyfriend who's cis, and I'm calling my junk a penis, and he has a penis also, but it functions so differently that it's difficult to call my junk a penis. It doesn't give me language to talk about how those parts feel. Sometimes I feel it makes me feel more dysphoric to call them what they really are, but I've realized for me, I'm just trying to work really hard at de-gendering those body parts and those experiences. If you are someone who wants to be going on testosterone, who wants to be getting these surgeries to transition physically, how does, saying you're 100% male before pursuing all those things, how does that kind of affirm your dysphoria? How do you have space to talk about the fact that your hormones don't feel right to you? Why would we be pursuing these things like hormones and surgery if it didn't make us more of something? Let's go out back and plan a family